It's Monday, June 19th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and very sad news out of Alaska this weekend. This comes to us via Suzanne Downing from the Must Read Alaska. Jim Tweto, famous, well-loved bush pilot from Alaska, and his passenger Shane Reynolds, age 45, a guide from Orofino, Idaho, were lost in the crash of Jim's Cessna 180. Here's what little we know so far. From the Aviation Safety Network, 16 June 2023, a Cessna 180H Skywagon, that would make it a 1969 model 180, November 91361, 2 fatalities, 2 occupants. A Cessna 180H crashed near Unalakleet, Alaska. Both occupants died and the aircraft was destroyed. The only real information we have on this crash comes from a trooper statement that is published here on Must Read Alaska. On June 16th, 2023, about 11:48 a.m., Alaska State Troopers were notified of an SOS activation from an inReach device. This is what an inReach device looks like, and most of us carry it around when we're out exploring in the backcountry. This device will not automatically, at least these older models like this one, will not automatically send a SOS. Somebody needs to activate it. So I suspect there was a witness to this crash that activated the inReach SOS call. It was reported that there had been a plane crash 35 miles northeast of Shaktoolik. The Cessna 180 aircraft was witnessed taking off but not climbing and then crashing. And that's all we know about this crash. Subsequent information was reported that both occupants of the aircraft were deceased. AST responded from Nome and recovered the 2 bodies. And we have the identification: Jim Tweto, age 68, from Unalakleet, and Shane Reynolds, from age 45, from Orofino. Next of kin have been notified. Jim Tweto became a household name in Alaska and throughout much of the rest of the aviation community here in the lower 48 as he starred in the Discovery cable TV series Flying Wild Alaska, a series that ended 12 years ago and often featured his 1969 Cessna 180H. And here's a good episode that has been embedded in this article here. See the link below to watch it. Jim's brother Ron passed away in an aviation accident back in 2002 in a Beech 1900C in Arkansas. Apparently, Ron was a passenger in this fatal accident flight in the Ozark Mountains. Shane Reynolds is a well-known guide, an experienced guide in Idaho here at Northwest Fishing Expeditions. Shane also guides in Alaska. A memorial fund for the family of Shane Reynolds has been set up here on GoFundMe and has raised to date nearly $80,000. See the link below. So this accident occurred on the west coast of Alaska. Unalakleet is located right here. Shaktoolik is located right here. The preliminary reports indicated that this accident occurred 35 miles northeast of Shaktoolik, which would put him somewhere on the Shaktoolik River, right around in this area, perhaps near this fork here. This terrain does not look very high. On the topography here, we're talking, if I can just get it to read, there's 1,500 feet above sea level in the mountains surrounding the river down below. If we turn on the satellite view, there's numerous sandbars here in the river. We do not know exactly where this accident occurred or where they were operating out of, or whether they were operating on this riverbed. But if they were doing a guided hunting trip or picking up people from there, they may very well likely have been operating in this riverbed area. Now, Jim's airplane is a 1969 H model Cessna 180, which normally comes stock with a 0470 engine producing about 230 horsepower. But Jim, like many of these backcountry operators, have had their engines upgraded, and I believe this was a IO 550 conversion in 361. The 550 conversion brings the horsepower up to about 300 horsepower. These engine conversions are very expensive, and they greatly increase the performance of the old Cessna 180. Here they're reporting a 51% increase in rate of climb, with a maximum takeoff RPM of 2,700 RPM. So without any data, there's no ADS-B data on this crash. It's going to be very difficult to determine what caused this crash. The witness, who apparently was an eyewitness to the crash, may be the most important piece of information crash investigators will have. Now, if that eyewitness had recorded the takeoff, that would be great, even if he had the audio data of the recorded takeoff, because a Cessna 180 with a 550 engine has a very distinct, loud sound, and investigators can easily determine if they had an audio file of the takeoff, whether that engine was producing full power, or at least 2,700 RPM on takeoff. At 2,700 RPM on the 80-inch diameter propeller, the Cessna 180 makes the very distinct sound of the propeller tips breaking the speed of sound as they rotate at that RPM and diameter. And here's what it sounds like. This comes from Shop Things video with a You hear that as he went past you, that rap sound? That's the sound of full power on one of these engines. If you had an audio file of that, you could determine whether full power was being produced or not. Because I find it hard to believe that this accident, one of the first things accident investigators are going to be looking at is, was the aircraft overloaded? But it's hard to overload one of these 180s at this elevation with this engine conversion. You're going to run out of room in the airplane before you overload the aircraft with weight, unless you're just hauling a ton of bear meat or something out of this area. So investigators will once again have to look at everything, including the weather. The winds could certainly be a factor in such an accident. The airframe itself, if they're able to recover enough of the wreckage, verify control continuity, especially the movable horizontal stabilizer trim portion of the 180. Make sure that was working okay. Tear the engine down, see if there's any indication of a partial loss of power on this engine, something like a stuck valve. I've had that happen before, where that will definitely reduce your power on takeoff, or a blockage of the air induction system can cause a reduction in power on takeoff without the engine failing completely, which appears to not be the case in this crash. Remember too, FAR 91.323, there is an allowance in Alaska to operate your aircraft 15% over gross weight. In this piece written by Jim's daughter Ariel, we're reminded in accidents like this that no matter how current and qualified and experienced you are, how good your equipment is, these accidents could happen to any of us. Thank you so much for your support. See you here.